Good evening. So I'm Gina Proulx, and I'm a school social worker at an elementary school in the Anoka-Hennepin School District. And Pastor Maria had asked if I would be willing to talk about mental health awareness. And so I debated kind of on what to cover in 8 to 10 minutes because there's a lot, obviously. So we're going to kind of go over a few different things. What I would like to start with is that when we think of the word mental health or mental illness, unfortunately, oftentimes those words are equated with other words like crazy or nuts or unstable, which is a huge stigma about mental health and mental illness. If we think about regular health issues, if somebody breaks their leg or has pneumonia or has cancer or something like that, we're reaching out to those people. We are sending cards, we're calling, we're doing meal trains, we're doing all sorts of things to try to help and support those people who have those types of issues. But if somebody is hospitalized, for a mental health type issue, it's a little bit more difficult for people. And usually it's not because they don't care, but it's more just not as comfortable of a thing to, not knowing what to say or what to do, that kind of thing. So it's important that we do just the opposite, that we think about, this is a health issue, and this is the same way that we would treat it, show that same care and concern. So if somebody that you know, or if you are struggling with a mental health issue, it's good to just ask about it and talk about it, and that's what we're going to go into. I pulled a couple of definitions of mental health and mental illness from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and I want to read a little excerpt of them. So mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. It's estimated that only 17% of U.S. adults are considered to be in a state of optimal mental health. So that is just Pastor Maria celebrates that. So that's a very small percentage, it feels like. That doesn't mean that, the rest of I'm not good at math, whatever, not 17% is. It doesn't mean that it's significantly mental health issues, but just that we all go through stuff, and such is life. So mental illness, on the other hand, is defined as it's collectively all diagnosable mental disorders or health conditions that are characterized by alterations in thinking, mood, or behavior, or some combination thereof, associated with distress and or impaired functioning. So depression is the most common type of mental illness, affecting more than 26% of U.S. adults. And these are really recent statistics. I want to say 2014. So it's estimated by the year 2020 that depression will be the second leading cause of disability throughout the world, trailing only to heart disease. So just a couple of definitions to throw in there. Those statistics were about adults. I have a couple others here about children. In 2012, this is just for Minnesota, so it's from Minnesota Department of Health and Human Services. Studies estimate that mental health problems affect 1 in 5 young people at any given time. I teach a class to the staff at our school, and we have 1,200 kids in our building, and so I say, 1 in 5, that's a huge percentage of those kids, so that's 20%, so it's a huge percentage of our kids alone that struggle with that. An estimated 91,000 children in Minnesota need treatment for emotional disturbances, so that's a lot there too. The most common mental health illnesses or issues that I see in the schools, in the elementary particularly, anxiety, that's probably the number one. Probably 70% to 80% of the kids that I see struggle from some sort of anxiety, either a full-blown disorder or just anxiety-related issues. And anxiety, as we know, is worry, but more than just a general worry. It's excessive, it interferes with functioning, that sort of thing. Depression is another huge one. Again, depression is feeling overly sad, not able to, get through something effectively. There's bipolar and other mood disorders that we see in kids. Attention deficit disorder, some self-injurious behavior where kids are harming themselves or using statements of harming themselves. We don't see a whole lot of eating disorders or substance abuse disorders in the elementary, but in our middle and high schools, they definitely do. We see a lot of behavior issues which, present themselves as behaviors, which often is just the tip of the iceberg, and usually it's something else that's, under that iceberg that it's coming from. So those are just a few of the common things that we see in the schools, or that I see. So I'm going to kind of talk about a few red flags or signs and symptoms that you can look for or be aware of that might, tip you off that something's not right, or that you're worried about someone to kind of watch for. The first one is physical symptoms. It can be those eating and sleeping habits, especially. Is somebody not eating? Have they lost a lot of weight? Or on the other hand, are they eating too much and gaining a lot of weight? It can be a sign of something going on. Sleeping is a huge one. Like somebody not sleeping at all, staying up most of the night, taking a lot of naps during the day, just off sleeping, or sleeping too much, like kids coming home from school and going right to bed and then getting up at midnight and staying up till 3, 4 in the morning and sleeping for a few hours and not being able to go to school. Those types of things can be huge red flags. Mood is an obvious one, and that's most commonly what we see. Just everything from sadness, overly sadness, to crying too much or all the time, not being able to kind of hold it together. Mood swings, huge ones. Irritability is huge, especially with the elementary age kids. We kind of see those kids that just seem angry and irritable all the time, and usually there's something else going on there. To excessive anger or worry, to where somebody just can't function or they just can't focus, that sort of thing. And any of those signs and symptoms, all the way to the opposite. It can be that somebody is just in a super good mood all the time, and everything seems great and there's no problems, when you know that they have 3 or 4 kind of major issues that they're dealing with, but they're maybe not dealing with. And then looking at habits, or some of their day-to-day activities. They might be withdrawing. That's a huge one. Not participating in sports, or going to school, or going to work. Not hanging out with friends like they usually would, or connecting with others, that kind of thing. Just a general loss of interest in things. It can be that, to things like making bad choices, getting into substance abuse or other addictive type behaviors, that kind of thing. And of course the last one, which is on the extreme, but it happens, the suicidal ideation statements or harming of oneself. People, or kids too, might just say things. They might just come out and say, I wish I was dead, or everything would be better if I wasn't here. You might hear something like that, and that's a red flag. I hear that a lot, I guess, more than I wish that I did, at the elementary school. And more often than not, probably 90% of the time, it's little ones just feeling really upset about something and not having any other way to verbalize how bad that they feel. So that's the worst possible thing that they can think of. But it's still something that needs to be addressed, obviously. And even if that is the case, they're still reaching out and needing that help. To things like cutting. A lot, we don't see too much of it in elementary. A couple times every year, probably I do, but in the middle and high schools, that's common. Kids will hurt themselves or do some cutting, that kind of thing. So if you know of someone that's doing that, huge red flag to get checked out. It's important to just be blunt about it, and it's not very comfortable to do oftentimes, but it's important too. Like, hey, I've been noticing that, that you've been saying these things, or that you've been hurting yourself. What's that about? We need to talk about that. Are you feeling serious about that? Do you have other ideas or other plans? Again, those are scary things to ask, but important. So if you're hearing or seeing any of those things, it's just important to, get them checked out, and to keep in mind that, when kids or grown-ups are going through things, obviously we're all going to go through some of those things. If we're going through a stressful situation, we might not sleep for a while, we might have poor eating habits, our mood might be, elevated, or mood swings will be irritable for a while, that kind of thing. All that's normal, and going through things, but when it becomes it's happening too often, or it's lasting longer than it should, or the intensity is so significant that you're not sure what to do, then those are all red flags to get things checked out. And I think it's just important too to say to someone, if you're worried about someone, to just say, hey, I'm kind of worried about you. Like, I've been noticing that you haven't been coming to our volleyball games, or I've noticed that you haven't been calling me back. What's going on? Are you doing okay? How can I help? That kind of thing, and just bringing those things up. And sometimes people might say, yeah, I'm having a really hard time, and other times people are like, oh, no, I'm okay, but I would still say to keep an eye on it and still keep asking them, and maybe getting the support of others around them as well, to kind of keep an eye on that. So I just wanted to close with a student that I have, just to kind of put it all together. An example. I have a student, he's a 5th grader now, I'll call him Tommy, and he was new at my school last year, so he was an incoming 4th grader. He came in and had a really hard time, had some anxiety coming to school, which, understandable, he moved, it's a new school. He went to his other school, K through 3, so this is the first time he moved. They moved into their grandparents' house due to loss of housing, so they were doubled up with the grandparents. So he moved, he changed schools, so he just had some anxiety coming in, and had a little bit of difficulty with that, which seemed a little bit normal at first, but then he was having a harder time coming to school, so I'd have to go out to the car and get him in every day, and spend the morning with him trying to get him calm enough to get him into class, and then the rest of the day seemed to be okay, but it was just that initial getting to school. Eventually, it got worse before it got better. He started, and this is extreme, but he started pulling out his hair, so that's called trichotillomania, which is a really big word, but he started pulling out his hair, so that was an extreme. So this had moved beyond just a normal, new move, kind of adjustment anxiety type issue. So we were getting him some help, and eventually, actually, he ended up on an anti-anxiety med, a very low dose of one, but that seemed to help to just take the edge off a little bit and allow him to be regulated enough to learn some of those coping skills and work through some of that anxiety. He had a great rest of the year. He's a hockey player, really good one, really supportive family. Things were going really well. The beginning of this year, we're always worried at the beginning of the school year because it's a new year, and a lot of kids with anxiety struggle sometimes, so he did great. I only saw him once a week. I didn't have to check in with him every morning or anything like that, so he had a great first half of the year, and then all of a sudden in February, he started to miss a lot of school. I think he missed like 8 or 9 days in February, and so checking into that further, it was he's moving again. His grandparents were moving. His sister was hospitalized, so there were more changes, and that kind of triggered the anxiety to rise again. He's still on that same level of medication and things like that, so it's just to show that that sometimes things can come and go, and that's kind of how it is. And but he's doing well. He's learning how to cope with things, and but just to be aware and keep an eye on those that you care about, and ask them about things. If you don't know or need some help, it's always good to reach out. If it's about a student, reach out to the school. Most schools, all schools, will have counselors or social workers, or a lot of buildings now have mental health therapists in the schools that kids can see as well. So that's always a good source to get information from. Church staff is great to go to for kind of that one stop. Hey, I'm looking for this, where can I go? We have a mental health support group here at church, that kind of thing. And obviously, like medical providers or therapists, that kind of thing is always good to reach out to too if you have concerns. I did throw a couple of resources on a handout, and there's some on the tables in the back. There's a few phone numbers on there and some websites. The first phone number is just a general resource and referral. It's an anonymous line. You can call there and ask for anything that you're looking for, whether it be a therapist in the Ramsey area, or maybe you're looking for a smoking support group, or things like that. You can find anything and everything there. Crisis Connection is a 24-hour crisis phone line, so you can always call there 24 hours a day. The Anoka County Crisis Response Service, it's a mobile crisis unit team, so they will actually come out to wherever you are. So I work on the Hennepin County side in our district, but and I've had interaction with the Hennepin County one, and it's great. It's a great resource. Had parents use it. We've used it at school. They'll come out, they'll assess the situation, decide if a student needs to be hospitalized or kind of continued care management. They'll hook you up with services. It's great. And the one up there is for youth and children, but there is, for each county, there is an adult one as well. So I should have put that number up there too. But and then the websites there just have a lot of fact sheets about mental health issues, kind of some common ones, anxiety, depression, that kind of thing. They're great resources to check out. So I, again, just would encourage you, if you're having concerns, to get some help and take care of each other and yourself. Thank you.